Welcome everyone to this webinar about how to lead innovation excellence in times of crisis and downturn. What we're going to do is gather a lot of you innovation professionals concerned about innovation in your organizations. We're going to support you first and foremost in acknowledging your important roles in the organization and the important need to keep it up, because we need innovation now more than ever, is what we claim. So we're going to inspire you, we're going to support you with a generic way of thinking about innovation and innovation excellence. And the goal is to, from the weeks to come, to break out in smaller groups and to focus on particular topics that are top of mind for you, so we can learn together about how to navigate these times of crisis. So enjoy this webinar and looking forward to working with you in the weeks to come. Welcome to this webinar about innovation leadership during economic downturn. Great that you've tuned in. And let's aim for a 1 hour webinar with some Q&A at the very end. So my name is Ferdinand Jaspers, Program Director here at Erasmus Center for Entrepreneurship. And normally we would like to welcome you in this facility, in this venue, here at the Erasmus Center for Entrepreneurship campus in the Rotterdam Science Tower. Here we welcome startups, we welcome scale-ups and corporate innovators, students, for a lively learning community. But yeah, nowadays it's empty, obviously. And in this downturn especially, we'd like to address you, those corporate innovators, those innovators in large organizations, large SMEs, and also in startup companies, if you want to tune in. We want to help you with innovation excellence and maintaining that, stepping it up. This is coming to you on behalf of our entire innovation excellence team, which we've created over the years together with professionals from large organizations, from entrepreneurs, from professors of our business school, Rotterdam School of Management. And together we've created this program over the years, supporting corporates, large SMEs, and also municipalities, ministries. And on behalf of that program, we'd like to encourage you, support you in this hour, because what we did together with academics, not just from our business school, but also with some professors from business schools across the Atlantic, what we did is create a program which supports innovation leaders, innovation informal leaders, innovation drivers, as we call them. So those innovation professionals, not just interested in doing the innovation, executing the innovation, but also those professionals who want to step it up, who want to improve the entrepreneurial competence of their organization, and also, for that matter, support their senior leadership. Well, with that said, in these challenging times, where innovation itself is hard enough, just itself, we would like to support you, encourage you in these difficult times. So yes, under these circumstances, maybe we have some insights and inspiration and suggestions for you. But also maybe, in this hour, we can structure your thinking a little bit. So what we will do is, based on our program, we will provide you with our main framework for structuring our thinking about innovation, governance, and excellence. And with that, hopefully we can create and sustain a community of peers in which, after this session, also taking on board your questions, we can continue the learning together. Because we've noted that you have many different specific innovation challenges in these times, and we would like to work with you, learn with you in these times, and help each other forward, because if one thing is for sure, we need to stick to innovation. We cannot let everything that we've built in the last couple of years, we cannot let that go to any waste. So we have to keep it up and help our organizations to maintain this capability. So who are you? We have about 150 participants, either live in this webinar or who will see the webinar later on. And looking at your points top of mind, we've noted that there are at least 3 things that stand out, the 3 Fs. So not the fools, the friends, and the families that you're used to, but no, we talk about focus, financials, and new ways, finding new ways of working. So obviously focus, how do we maintain the focus of our organization on the long term? Because hopefully in your organizations, innovation, future growth has become more and more on the agenda. But now this is the moment of truth. Are we serious about this? Have we really moved beyond innovation theater? So these are the times, the testing times, where we have to stick to that, and we have to fight perhaps any tendencies to try and diminish or kill innovation. Financials, for that matter, right? Where maybe our budgets are under scrutiny or taken away from us. So how do we deal with that? And maybe even most importantly, for us as innovation professionals, which is also very much about people business, talking to people, motivating people, building networks. It's really about how can we collaborate? How can we build and maintain relationships in our teams, in our innovation teams, inside the organization towards top managers, but also, of course, across the boundary of our organization, looking at the wider ecosystem that we're working in. So a lot of challenges, and let's see how we can learn together and maybe have some insights already today. Well, on the go, please contribute. Please provide some questions in the chat box. I'll be looking at them real time. Also, at the end, I'll have some time to take some of your questions, or if you have any solutions, recommendations, some remarks, please bring them in. So, and if we can't cover them today, the hope is and the wish is that we can organize specific theme sessions with live interaction later on. So let's get it going. And let's start perhaps with the most important overall insight that we, on behalf of the Erasmus University, can give to you. And that has to do with these figures. Because looking at research about innovation in times of crisis, looking at the investment behavior of stock listed companies, about 600 of them, in the dot-com crisis in the early 2000s, then we saw that about 75% of companies cut back on their innovation investments, whereas only 25% maintained their innovation efforts and even stepped it up. So in the short term, we noticed that those investing companies got hit on the stock market. Okay, this was not perceived favorably by investors. On the contrary, the stock prices of cost-cutting companies rose. But what was the effect in the mid to long term? So looking at the 4 years after the crisis in the early 2000s, then we saw that, of course, also the companies that did not invest overall, their stock prices and their revenues increased. However, there's a striking difference between those companies and those companies that maintained their innovation efforts. Because looking at those companies, they had faster growing share prices and revenue levels in those years after the crisis. So this, from an overall perspective, is perhaps the most encouraging insight that we can give you, which hopefully you can take back to your organizations as at least one of the ways to convince and to convince stakeholders to maintain innovation efforts in your company. So what actually do we talk about when we mention innovation excellence? Well, innovation is a difficult profession. It takes building a competence that covers many different topics. We'll go over them in the rest of the webinar. Well, in one sentence, the quote that's very striking is this one on the slide, which really has this metaphor of a machine, building a complex machine that has to cover all kind of elements that fit together. So starting with some elements, we have to consider the innovation thesis, as we call that. So what the content or the substance of your innovation program. So the innovation vision that you have, the innovation focus, which particular areas are you interested in for future growth, and with what kind of intensity are you innovating? How many resources, people do you throw at it? So from an economic downturn perspective, what are some insights when it comes to the innovation thesis? Well, first of all, let's not be too negative, because in these times especially, you might find yourself in an organization where maybe senior management or the organization is convinced that innovation should be protected, and maybe we should even step it up. And that, for instance, was the case following the financial crisis at DSM. Feike Sijbesma was very firm in his statements towards investors that, yes, cost cutting in the core, but the innovation program, the innovation budget is something that is out of the question. We stick to that and we follow our vision. Or from another, let's say, positive perspective, we find organizations that, especially in these times, kickstart their innovation programs. And that, for instance, was also following the financial crisis, the case at ING. With the arrival of a new CEO, this really kicked in a new era of innovation and innovation excellence at ING. So that might be your context. And even then, it will be very challenging for you to obviously develop and maintain the innovation excellence competence of your company. But in these times, I can imagine, and that's also something that I've seen and heard in the last couple of weeks quite a lot. Of course, the prime focus is on the core, because you might find yourself all of a sudden on a burning platform. So then you have no choice but to fight the fire, right? So many innovation teams or professionals might find themselves working inside the core to do some necessary operational activities, obviously. And that's okay. But there might be other opportunities in this regard, because what we find is that it's not just firefighting. We also find that existing organizations all of a sudden have to urgently, on the spot, renew their business model, because traditional channels might not work. We have to work towards digital channels. We might no longer serve our existing customers, so we may need to find new customers. Maybe with our existing resources, we can find new opportunities to bring that to the market. So all of a sudden, in that sense, there's an urgent need for innovation. And if you are this innovation professional in your organization, this is the time for you to flourish, to step it up and to show what you're up for. Because if there's anybody inside an organization that's able to deal with ambiguity, to coach teams, and to guide them through this, this urgent need for innovation, then I guess that's you. So help your organization pick up and accelerate some trends or developments that have been going on anyway, like digital transformation, more agile ways of working, which we see in many organizations. This is maybe the time to step it up with your support. And lastly, we find that over the years, there might be a difficult relationship between innovation teams and people working in the core organization, if you will. It's us versus them mentality sometimes. And it's vital that there are these bridges, that there's mutual respect between innovation and the core organization, because at the end of the day, it's about collaboration. It's about the joint future of the organization. So this is in particular a time, mind you, to build that network, to foster the trust and the respect between these two different activities in an organization. So be aware of that and take that opportunity also with a view on the longer term. Okay, so let me proceed for a bit, and then later on address some of your questions. So yes, we may want to support the core, but at the same time, we have our ongoing innovation projects and innovation activities. How to deal with that? Well, assuming that they are structured in terms of, let's say, the 3 horizons, so some activities more in the distant future, some activities, some pilots, some experiments that are more near term, and then especially some bigger projects, some more expensive projects like scale-ups, accelerating projects. So spread across these 3 activities. Maybe overall we want to maintain our focus and want to stick to our vision, but at the same time we may want to reallocate our resources, like these expensive scale-up activities. All of a sudden they might be much more risky. Will there still be investors if we meet the next hurdle of our innovation process? Or maybe some assumptions that were proven to be true in the last couple of months, are they still as they were? So maybe we can scale them down, we can halt them, we can pause them for a bit to prevent any risky investments. This means that there are some resources available, some people available perhaps for reshifting our focus to some activities in our current portfolio like certain discovery activities, certain technologies, certain trends and developments that we want to explore. Now we may want to step it up so that we have a richer portfolio once this crisis will diminish, and we can step up some incubation activities and experiments and pilots in these areas. And the same goes for incubation. Please, maybe there are some opportunities for which you can even generate some cash to do some experiments with customers, with launching customers. So that might be an opportunity for you to shift across your portfolio. But next to supporting the core, next to sticking through and reshuffling your existing portfolio, maybe there's another opportunity, which has to do with refocusing your innovation efforts, because these are obviously the times where there are rapid developments outside in the wider society and economy. So assuming that you are these innovation professionals, maybe this is the time where you can also have a benefit for the organization, also for the core organization, to scout and see what's going on, to keep track of the developments, of new opinions, of new customer needs and behaviors. So what are those opportunities that you spot, and how will you communicate that in the organization? And also, how will you not just observe and have this outside-in perspective, but also how do you maybe give some first tangible results? Like, how will you maybe build new relationships with actors, with stakeholders that you haven't been in touch with before? So maybe this is the time to give that a go. Prime example here is companies also being able to step it up towards sustainability and social causes. This has been a trend in the last couple of years for sure, and maybe this is the moment where we can, sustainably have social causes as part of our innovation effort. So that is not just profit, but more and more profit and purpose, social impact that will guide our innovation efforts. And especially in these days, obviously, supporting others with healthcare, with maybe food, with income is something that is very close to who you are as a company. So please take this to your heart and spot these opportunities for refocusing your innovation activities. Right. So looking at some of your questions, I think if I don't answer them now, maybe I'll come back to them later, just having a look at what would be a great moment. Yeah, so this great question here about, the classic rule of thumb of 70-30 or 70-20-10 of budget allocation across the 3 horizons. Well, I think going back to this question or to this slide, actually the suggestion would be to consider maybe reducing your expenditures in second horizon, which is more expensive scale-up activities. Perhaps, if budgets are under pressure, maybe this is for you, given that these activities are becoming more and more risky, an opportunity to pause that for a bit, save some time and resources, and allocate that differently to more third horizon, less expensive, less risky activities, and maybe also to spend some of those resources in refocus activities, to explore new domains of strategic intent. Okay, there's also a question about a good book that possibly could be inspirational for the innovation process. I think looking at my slides, some of the sources at the bottom will be helpful there. Okay. So yes, also a question about investing in the long term. Yeah, let's see if we can take that at the end. But for sure, the main insight so far is that in the long term, companies who stick to innovation, they outperform companies who do not invest in innovation, especially in times of crisis. Okay, so I'm curious, when it comes to the innovation content, the innovation thesis, so the vision that you have, why do you innovate, the areas in which you innovate, and also the resources with which you innovate and how you allocate them. How are you changing that? How are you managing that as an innovation professional at the moment? So if you have any questions or insights, then please do share so that we can take that on board today or possibly afterwards. So so far the innovation content of our innovation machine. But now let's consider the many different ways in which we can deliver on this promise, this innovation promise to the organization. So how? Some kind of processes for innovation excellence. So the metrics that we use, talent development is part of that, leadership development, open innovation, our organization structure. So all these elements require work, require maintenance, require reflection. And maybe this is finally a time where we can do this reflection, because I can imagine that you're very, very busy day in, day out, doing the innovation execution. But maybe this is a time, if any, to reflect on your innovation competence. Finally, this is time to maybe share some best practices or learn from past mistakes, or to assess your teams, or to, build new relationships, assess how your inside out, outside in focus plays out at the moment. Does that need any rebalancing? So let's dive in and see a couple of things. And we can only start this by addressing you, assuming that you are innovation professionals, that formally or informally, part of your job or of your role in the organization is to not only execute innovation or build a company or build a business model, but also to work on that machine, to develop the innovation competence of yourself, of your team, of your people, of your organization. And that's a hard job. That requires many different capabilities, also requires a lot of knowledge and expertise. And this capability is it that we want to foster. So we want you to help others in the organization. So this means also serving as a sounding board to senior management, to break some barriers, to have this outside-in perspective, to support, to coach others. So how does that work in times of crisis? Well, one piece of research from one of the professors in our program, Daan Stam from Rotterdam School of Management, has investigated leadership styles in times of crisis. And there he found that leaders are much more likely to get support from the rest of the organization for their new plans and their initiatives if the communication style of that leader is very positive, is very much focused on the upside in the future, of the bright future, that we should have confidence and have faith in that direction. So opposed to maybe leaders who stress fear and anxiety, and that there's this burning platform and that we should get into action. So also with that insight from academic research, we hope to inspire you to adopt your communication style that fits this requirement. And not just your own communication style, but maybe you can also help your senior leaders to change, if needed, their innovation and communication approach. And if there's anybody in the organization, I guess, who is typically positive about the future in the mid and the long term, who has this bright vision, then I guess that's you as an innovation professional, because you are working on creating this future day in, day out. So please, with this piece of insight, reflect, give feedback, and help yourself, your teams, and your senior leadership to adopt an appropriate communication style. But I can imagine that it's difficult. So if you have any challenges about that, please speak up. Because yes, we have to find new ways of collaborating with our teams, with customers, with suppliers, also with people inside our organization across units. So how do we do that? Because these lively face-to-face brainstorm sessions or these kitchen table talks with possible clients, they're no longer possible. Or so vital for you as an innovation professional, maybe the informal chat at the coffee machine is no longer possible to influence people, to get a feeling of what's going on, to get access to resources. So how do we cope with that? Well, we can come a long way with digital tools, but it has for sure its limits. And yes, we have maybe a digital Friday afternoon drink session and all of that, but And there are all kind of tools to do whiteboard sessions virtually, etc. But how can we make the most out of that? If you have any questions, challenges, then this is, for instance, one of the topics that we have some more insights about. And also we would like to learn together with you how to make that work. All right, so innovation processes, but also talent development, because I can imagine that as an innovation professional, it's not, you know, in abundance that we have entrepreneurial talent in our innovation teams, let alone in the wider organization. So these are times perhaps where you can find in your organization those talents that show what we see here, some of the entrepreneurial competences that are defining. And we see so many examples out there at the moment in the media where companies have new initiatives to, for instance, help people in their local communities, to maybe use their production facilities to all of a sudden produce ventilators, sanitizers, all kind of health equipment. So this is entrepreneurial behavior. This is proactive, intrinsically motivated people who just step it up, who motivate others, and who, with a sustainable, ethical mindset, take initiative, and also apparently, deal with the risk and want to do new stuff. So this is maybe a time where you can, as an innovation professional, interested in the mid to long term to develop your innovation competence, you can scout and find these hidden talents so far, which maybe in the future you can use and work with in your innovation programs. So that said, let's talk about entrepreneurship. Let's talk about innovation. Let's talk about whether you are working for a large corporate, for a public organization, for a small company. Let's talk about the essence of entrepreneurship. So based on what we just saw, those entrepreneurial behaviors and competences, what do we know about what it takes to to develop an idea, to bring it further? Well, first of all, we find that serial expert entrepreneurs in a corporate setting or in a startup setting, they have a couple of things in common. First of all, they thrive under uncertainty and ambiguity. And what they do is, if there's any setback or if there's any crisis for that matter, they take those lemons and they, from another perspective, they try to make lemonade. Okay, so they try to see the positives or the opportunities that exist because of this, in principle, quite negative situation. So they look at what they have rather than what's outside of their control. So with your available means, with the resources that you have available, what can we make out of that? And it's not just about preventing any risk. It's really about thinking like, hey, what's affordable for me? So what do I have to lose, or what am I willing to lose? But understanding that there is a huge upside potentially. So that motivates them, that brings them into action, and that helps them to learn together with others. Because if there's one thing, entrepreneurship or coming up with new ideas, especially in these times, it's not something that you can do on your own. So it's maybe building new relationships and creating new opportunities. As this Corona flag illustrates, right? This flag producer, all of a sudden almost out of business, created this flag almost overnight, together with support from the public. This helped them to ramp up their production facilities, also have people support each other, and also have some revenues also for the Red Cross. So this is a good example of how an organization embraces, let's say, the lemons, uses what it has available, and with limited loss, co-creates something positive, something not just for the community but also for the company itself. We see nowadays also, for instance, just one example, EasyJet, right? The airliner. All of a sudden, its crew is now helping an emergency hospital in the UK to operationally run that facility. And so we have many examples in the media the last couple of weeks. which is very promising and heartwarming. Okay, so with that, let's work towards a wrap up. Let's work towards maybe also some Q&A, and let's also take stock of where we stand. So we believe that if you really want to sustainably step it up as an organization with your innovation competence, and again, whether you are a large SME or a corporate or a large municipality or ministry, you need to have a clear vision of where to go. And it's not just this vision, you also need a certain language, a certain focus of types of innovation that's supposed to bring you to that future. And this should be aligned with the resources that you make available for it. Your people, your budgets, your networks. So that's the content, the thesis of your innovation. But this in itself is not enough. It requires conscious maintenance and development in terms of the processes that you use and the metrics perhaps for performance management, your organization structure, the leadership that you have for innovation, and also to what extent and how you're open to the wider community for your innovation efforts. Talent development, conscious HR for teams, for specific talent, and for careers in innovation. So, and collectively, this is not just a governance system. Working on this is also going a long way into developing an entrepreneurial and innovative culture in your organization. So with this framework, we would like to give you some kind of template for structuring your own innovation competence and work, for you as an innovation driver to reflect on where you stand in all these domains, how well they interact, and also in these challenging times to consider what's under pressure, where maybe are the opportunities, and how maybe you can make some lemonade out of the current situation to make sure that in the mid to long term your innovation competence not just exists, but also is able to step it up for the benefit of everybody involved. So that will be the innovation competence system. So with that, we have some time for Q&A, and also just to double check with you if you have any questions, but also if you have any recommendations when it comes to some of the topics that we've covered before. So let me go over a couple of questions. Yeah, recommending a good book about the innovation process. I think this allows me, Robert Jan, to make a distinction between two processes. We have the innovation process from idea to implementing that idea as a new business model or whatever. And then I think you have classic books about business modeling, about opportunity engineering, about lean startup, for that matter, design thinking, all are all relevant here. But also the innovation process at the more systemic level. So how do you create the innovation process of the innovation engine? And then, for instance, what we work with is a book by Michael Tushman about lead and disrupt, which is really about ambidexterity, so that you not just operate the core very, very well, but at the same time you have this growth engine to come up with new opportunities over and over again. Yeah, and then this question by Jem about what kind of opportunities to invest in to ensure the long term. I think that really depends. I think every organization itself has to reevaluate your current innovation activities. I can imagine that many of them are still valuable, but maybe depending on your situation, you may want to kill certain innovation intent areas. And as we mentioned, refocus and find new opportunities for future growth, given the radical changes that might take place at the moment in your environment. So there's no generic answer there, but how to exactly do that, I think this is a great opportunity to explore together after this webinar. Yeah, I think we've talked about allocating the budget across the three horizons, if you will. So yes, I think there's pressure to do more innovation in the core. There's opportunity for maybe cutting your expenditures a little bit in the expensive Horizon 2 area. And yeah, the least risky, but perhaps also a little bit revenue generating activities in Horizon 2 and 3. Maybe those pilots and search activities is something that you can step up to future-proof the organization. So then what else? Yeah, some whiteboard tools. They're at least what we use here is MS Teams, and also we can link that to OneNote. I think in one of the webinars or the trainings that we did online last week, it worked quite well. That people have a joint, let's say, Word document, and that worked quite well to map to do some kind of post-it session. But I guess there are many others, and I think it will only be good to explore and share with others what are the whiteboard tools that are working for you. For us, at least, OneNote works quite well. Yeah, so great question by Jeroen about the logic for investing in the long term. So yes, the stock price, let's say, gives you an argument, and of course, maybe you might not be part of a stock listed company, but then I still think that we have some evidence that also for family businesses, SMEs, this is also true. Some other arguments we might consider is just I think also has to do with culture. In times of crisis, the latent culture, or what we truly believe are true values, they show up. And if you're really serious about entrepreneurship and innovation and giving autonomy to people, all those entrepreneurial traits and features of organizations, there's no better time to showcase that and to show that to your employees and to your people and stakeholders than times of crisis. So this is where leaders can show their true belief, and I guess this is also where you create the culture of the future for your organization, because this is a time where stories are being built, where artifacts are being built, where in 3 to 5 to 10 years time, people will still have stories in the organization about what happened in this period of time. So if you're really serious about being an innovative company, being there for your communities, for certain social causes, then this is the time to be very serious about that and to make sure that at least it's not killed, at least that there is some kind of minimum, well, at least a pilot flame, but hopefully much more than that, to sustain that effort. So yes, there's also, I guess, this emotional and social appeal that you can make to your leaders. Yes, of course. The advice is always to go out of the building, to talk to customers, to observe your customers. But how to do that in these days? Very, very difficult, I must say. Of course, there are alternatives, and you can go a certain way with digital solutions. And if possible, if it's not it's risky, but if you're aware of that, it's an option to fast forward your innovation process. So to maybe proceed way faster to product market fit stages and to MVP and prototyping than you would normally do. But then you have to imagine that if you have an MVP or a first working or high fidelity prototype, if that's not too expensive, that you're testing this solution without you being as sure as you would normally be about the underlying problem and customer need. So you have to be very careful and conscious about this, but it's an option to maybe fast forward your process a little bit and to resolve this issue. Daily dialogues or my dialogues as a tool. Okay, great. So you're already sharing some information. Nice. Tim, on the system side. Good ways to compare your portfolios. Okay, so portfolio management. Well, indeed, the underlying assumption of what I talked about when we addressed, maybe refocusing your activities, or maybe reallocating your resources across projects, that really indeed has an assumption that you know actually what's going on. And many very professional innovation organizations, they have that. They have portfolio management, they have review meetings, they consciously allocate their processes and have discussions about that. So yes, from the perspective of working on the machine and reflecting on the machine and stepping it up, this is maybe first and foremost one of the opportunities to engage in portfolio management, to review actually what's going on, and to then make some best guess for a minimum, some best guess changes into how you allocate your resources and how you define your areas of strategic intent. So that's first of all. But then the next question, so assuming that you already have that capability, then how to then use, depart from that insight, from that capability to compare portfolios? That's a fair question. There's a couple of things I can say about it, but this is, I guess, also one of the topics that I'm very eager myself to learn about, and to see what other organizations are doing and how we can help each other. I think I think at least what I like, but then it's something that then I speak as a private person. I can only stress the need more and more for, in my view, of, for instance, sustainable development goals, which I mentioned, because we see investors increasingly being keen on that. We also see increasingly students being interested in those areas. So when it comes to attracting talent, keeping talent, and also about motivating people, about also having better and better relationship with investors and other stakeholders, I think a new lens of your innovation portfolio is increasingly specific social causes on which your company wants to thrive. Yeah, Anouk says that the company is hit very, very hard, so it's very hard to get stakeholders aligned. Yeah, that's such a shame, but it's so understandable that if all of a sudden revenue disappears, then of course this is definitely a burning platform. So then these are the extreme situations under which you want to maybe maintain innovation, and that's almost impossible. Maybe it is impossible. Maybe it is that your company has no choice but to kill it, and that will be, of course, very, 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 very sorry. But then, what in these extreme cases is still something that you can do to preserve? Is there some way to at least have some kind of pilot flame that you can turn on and keep? So how can you make sure that there's something to be able to awaken once better times will appear? But yes, this is exactly also what we want to learn together, because under these extreme situations, which we've hardly seen before, this is exactly something that we want to help you with. And of course, we have some more ideas. It's about it seems impossible to get stakeholders aligned. So that does assume that there are some stakeholders, some people in the organization, maybe some senior people in the organization who believe that innovation should be kept alive, but not everybody. So then how do you do that influencing? How do you do that without face-to-face contact? And that is indeed something that at the end of the day is specific to your organization, but also something that we would, in lively interaction, we would like to work with you and with peers to assist you as much as we can. But we understand your difficulty, and that's exactly what we want to help you with. Okay, so some more tools are being shared. Yeah, micro trends and insights. Yeah. I'm not so sure if I get all the questions. Let me look at your questions. Yeah, about communication style. I think what this research was all about was really communication to get support from the followers, mostly also internally, to get motivated people that that believe and buy in for the plans, and that they are motivated by that and support that. But I can imagine that it's also true for communication with your partners, customers, other people in your ecosystem. So the research itself was, I think, internally focused. But in times of crisis, that might be a general takeaway. And again, as an innovation professional, I guess this is something that comes a bit more natural to you than maybe some of your other people in your organization. So maybe you have to be aware of that and use that in how you communicate much more consciously than you would normally do. Yeah, and then Shara, a great question there about having a positive communication style versus maybe the honest feelings of people about fear and anxiety. And these are indeed two things. I think what stands out for innovation, something that I haven't stressed before, is that in this entire innovation excellence system, what stands out is the need for psychological safety. Okay, so for people to be themselves, to be able to contribute themselves, and to, as an organization, to really leverage this diversity that brings to the table. So yes, even though maybe your vision communication is positive, I think what's also very, very important is that you provide room and space for people to speak up, maybe in their teams, maybe in bilateral meetings or smaller groups. Because yes, what we're doing together actually is to learn how to operate and innovate and survive in this new environment, in these times of crisis. So it's new for many of us. So that means that there's for sure anxiety. There's for sure some fear about what the future might bring. Even though maybe we buy into this future vision, still we might think like, hey, is this what does it mean for me? Will I be part of that journey? Can I be part of that journey? So yes, I think what should be done in combination with positive vision communication is very much giving room and space for creating this psychological safety. So excellent point there, Shara. So let me think. I think I'd like to iterate a couple of more things. Like, I hope you all feel that what we did in this webinar is really, it's about focusing at the end of the day on you, and understanding that, as what who was it? What Anouk mentioned, these are difficult times. Maybe you've worked on the innovation competence of your organization for years, and now all of a sudden, this is about to maybe be vanished. So that's heartbreaking. And also in the long term, it's we simply know that this is probably a bad thing for the organization. So we want to support you in these difficult times, because we know innovation is a difficult profession, and especially these days, that might be true. So hopefully, being part of this community and also getting some general thinking and insights from this webinar is supporting you. And hopefully you can also work with us and learn with us and support each other after this webinar to address specific topics like, how to survive these difficult times, how to reshuffle our activities across a portfolio, and how to do testing with customers, how to do brainstorming in the organization, how to mobilize resources, how to support the core, how to interact with senior managers. So all these things is something that's probably keeping you awake at night. And hopefully, together we can pick up those challenges, have some more smaller setting webinars and lively Teams sessions with people speaking up interactively, so that we can learn together, informed by also some, if we can prepare that, some academic insights that we know increases the chances of success, and then hopefully we can create this community to help each other in these difficult times, so that, you know, for our companies, for our personal, you know, satisfaction and careers, but also for, I guess, the wider society, this will in the mid to long term be only beneficial. So with that, looking also at maybe some questions coming in, I think that for now we have covered everything that we wanted to cover, and, you know, keep up the good work. Let's support each other. Reach out to us if there's anything you want. We will for sure also reach out to you to see how we can move forward. So thank you so much for being with us, for being interested in this webinar. And if in the meantime you want to learn more about, you know, this overall framework that we've had with our overall vision that we have, feel free to reach out or to study a bit more on our website. But definitely we would like to pursue this in follow-up webinars in smaller settings, very interactively, to really help each other in these difficult times. So on behalf of the entire team of the Innovation Excellence Program, thank you so much and have a great day.